This season of pain will pass. Jesus is by your side and he won't let go of your hand until everything turns out right. There are seasons where people stop asking when the miracle will come. They start asking how much longer they can survive the pain. Maybe you know exactly what that feels like. Waking up tired before the day even begins. Trying to stay strong while something inside you quietly keeps breaking. Smiling for people who do not understand what you are carrying. Praying, waiting, hoping, and secretly wondering if life will always feel this heavy. Because long seasons of pain change something inside a person. At first you fight hard. You believe strongly. You expect things to improve. But after enough delay, enough disappointment, enough invisible battles, something dangerous begins happening. You do not only become afraid of pain, you become afraid the pain will never leave. That fear is different, because it whispers, "This is your life now. This weight is permanent, this season will never change," and when pain stays long enough, even hope can begin feeling emotionally expensive. Because hoping again means risking disappointment again. Trusting again means becoming vulnerable again. Believing again means opening the heart to uncertainty one more time. That is exhausting. Especially for people carrying silent suffering. The emotional exhaustion nobody notices. The healing that feels delayed. The internal battle of trying to survive publicly while privately feeling overwhelmed. And maybe this is exactly where you are right now, trapped inside a season that refuses to end. Trying to understand why the prayer still feels unanswered. Trying to understand why strength feels harder to find than it used to. Trying to understand whether Jesus is still close inside all of this. Listen carefully to this truth. This season of pain is temporary, even if it feels endless. Not because your emotions suddenly changed. Not because the circumstance immediately disappeared. Because pain was never meant to become your permanent home. And what if the pain you are fighting right now is not the place where your story ends, but the place where Jesus refuses to let go of your hand? Think about that. What if the reason you are still here, still breathing, still fighting, still searching for God, despite everything, is not because you are carrying this season alone? Because some of the deepest proof of God's presence appears during seasons people thought they would never survive. And before you can understand how Jesus stays close inside suffering, you must understand something painful but important. Long seasons of pain do more than hurt emotionally. They change the way people see life itself. Pain does not only hurt, pain teaches, and sometimes prolonged pain teaches the wrong lessons. Because long seasons of suffering slowly begin changing the way a person sees life. At first, you expect improvement. You believe healing is coming. You keep emotional space open for hope. But after enough disappointments, enough delays, enough battles that lasted longer than expected, your internal posture begins shifting, not loudly, quietly. You stop expecting good news. You stop trusting peaceful seasons. You stop allowing yourself to hope freely. Because disappointment trained your heart to stay guarded. That is what prolonged pain often attacks. Expectation. Pain does not only attack happiness, it attacks expectation. Think about how deep that goes. When expectation becomes wounded, a person can still function externally while internally preparing for disappointment. You pray, but expect silence. You try, but expect failure. You move forward but emotionally brace yourself for loss. Not because you became negative by nature, because pain reshaped perception. And maybe this explains something you have been struggling to understand about yourself lately. Maybe you are not only fighting the original problem anymore. Maybe you are fighting what prolonged pain did to your mind and spirit. The mental exhaustion, the emotional numbness, the difficulty feeling hopeful without immediately feeling vulnerable. Because after carrying invisible battles for too long, some people start protecting themselves from hope. That sounds strange, until you live through it. Because hope feels dangerous when disappointment became familiar. Believing again feels risky when delay has been your recent history. Trusting again feels emotionally expensive when your heart already feels tired. And slowly, survival mode takes over. You stop dreaming as freely. You stop expecting restoration as confidently. You stop recognizing how deeply pain has influenced the way you interpret reality. That matters spiritually. Because once expectation becomes damaged, people begin asking difficult questions. Is God still working? Is Jesus still close? Did heaven quietly move on while I stayed here struggling? Those questions do not always come from rebellion. Many times they come from exhaustion, from carrying too much pain for too long, from trying to stay faithful while your emotional energy keeps running low. And maybe someone listening right now needs permission to admit that honestly. You feel tired. Not only because the circumstance is difficult, because prolonged pain changed how your heart experiences hope itself. But listen carefully. The fact that pain affected your perception does not mean Jesus abandoned your reality. Because God's presence during suffering is often quieter than people expect. And this is exactly where many people begin discovering something surprising. Jesus stays close during seasons people thought would break them completely. One of the most painful misconceptions people carry during suffering is this: if Jesus were truly close, this would already be over. Many people never say that out loud, but deep inside they feel it. Because human beings naturally associate God's presence with immediate rescue, immediate answers, immediate relief, immediate change. But God's presence during suffering is often quieter than people expect. Not absent, quieter. And that distinction changes everything. Because Jesus does not abandon exhausted people. He does not shame people for struggling. He does not walk away because your faith feels weaker than it used to. He stays, even when emotions feel unstable, even when prayers feel repetitive, even when you do not understand what he is doing. Think about that image for a moment. Jesus stays in the room after everyone else emotionally leaves, after the encouraging messages stop coming, after people stop asking how you are doing, after emotional strength runs lower than you thought possible. He stays. That matters more than many people realize. Because divine presence is not always instant rescue. Sometimes it is supernatural endurance. The strength to survive a night you thought would destroy you. The peace that appears in moments that should have broken you emotionally. The unexplained ability to keep moving when your own strength feels insufficient. And maybe you have already experienced that without fully recognizing it. Because there were days you thought you would collapse. Days where the emotional weight felt unbearable. Days where you honestly believed, I cannot keep carrying this. And somehow, you are still here. Still breathing. Still searching for God. Still listening to this message. Do not dismiss that too quickly. You survived nights you thought would destroy you because you were not carrying the pain alone. That does not minimize the suffering. The pain was real. The exhaustion was real. The unanswered questions were real. But Jesus remained present inside all of it. Not always in dramatic ways. Sometimes through quiet strength. Sometimes through hidden protection. Sometimes through enough grace for one more day when one more day felt impossible. And maybe the reason you are still standing is not because you are stronger than you think. Maybe Jesus never loosened his grip on your hand. That thought becomes deeply important during long seasons of pain. Because suffering creates difficult questions. Questions about delay. Questions about silence. Questions about why healing takes longer than expected. And eventually, many hurting hearts begin asking the same painful question. Lord, why has this not changed yet? Lord, why has this not changed yet? That question lives inside more hearts than people admit. Because long pain creates difficult spiritual tension. You pray, but the situation still exists. You trust, but healing still feels delayed. You keep believing, but time keeps moving faster than the breakthrough you expected. And eventually, painful questions begin rising. Did God forget me? Did I do something wrong? Why does restoration feel so far away? Those questions are not signs of weak faith. Many times they are signs of exhausted faith. Because suffering becomes heavier when you cannot understand its timeline. Human beings tolerate pain differently when they can see an ending. But when the season stretches longer than expected, confusion enters the battle. That is where many people quietly confuse delay with abandonment. But delay is not always abandonment. That truth matters deeply. Because some wounds heal like scratches. Others heal like broken bones. A scratch may disappear quickly. A broken bone demands rebuilding, time, protection, deep restoration happening beneath the visible surface. Painful seasons can work similarly. Not because God enjoys watching people suffer, because God is not only interested in ending pain, he is interested in restoring what pain damaged. Think about that carefully. Long suffering damages more than emotions. It can damage trust, expectation, identity, peace, the ability to feel safe emotionally, the ability to believe life can become beautiful again. God sees those deeper fractures too. And sometimes heaven is healing things you cannot immediately measure. Internal transformation, hidden preparation, a deeper dependence that is difficult to develop during comfortable seasons. That does not romanticize suffering. Pain still hurts. Waiting still exhausts. Delayed healing still raises difficult emotions. But it introduces another possibility. What if heaven has not been inactive inside your suffering? What if something deeper has been happening beneath the visible frustration? Because while you thought heaven was silent, something deeper may have been healing inside you. Not everything, not completely, maybe not in the timeline you wished, but quietly, steadily, faith being strengthened, identity being protected, parts of your heart being rebuilt in ways you cannot fully see yet. And perhaps this changes an important question. Instead of only asking, why is this taking so long? You begin asking, what is Jesus restoring inside me while I walk through this season? That question shifts perspective. Because healing is not only the absence of pain, healing is also the recovery of the person pain tried to redefine. And that leads to a powerful truth many exhausted people desperately need to rediscover. There will come a day when this pain no longer defines who you are. One of the most dangerous things prolonged suffering can do is convince a person that pain became their identity. Not just their circumstance, their identity. At first, pain is something you are walking through. But when the season becomes long enough, subtle changes begin happening. You stop introducing yourself internally through hope, through purpose, through possibility. And without noticing it, you begin interpreting yourself through survival, through exhaustion, through what hurt you, through what you lost, through what still has not healed. That shift is powerful, because healing is not only the absence of pain, healing is the return of identity beyond pain. Think about how many people have been suffering for so long that they no longer remember who they were before the battle intensified, before disappointment shaped their expectations, before exhaustion shaped their emotions, before pain became the lens through which they viewed themselves. Maybe you understand that feeling. You still believe in God, but you barely recognize your own emotional strength anymore. You still move forward, but joy feels unfamiliar, peace feels distant, trust feels heavier than it used to. And little by little, suffering tries to convince you, this is who you are now. But listen carefully. You are walking through pain. You are not becoming pain. That distinction matters more than you realize. Because storms can shape seasons without possessing identity. You are not your delay. You are not your emotional exhaustion. You are not the unanswered prayer. You are not the suffering you are carrying. You are a person moving through a difficult chapter. A chapter Jesus refuses to abandon, and one day, this season will no longer control the way you see yourself. One day, the storm that taught you survival will no longer control your identity. You will breathe emotionally again. You will rediscover parts of yourself that pain tried to bury. You will recognize strength that suffering tried convincing you had disappeared forever. Not because the battle never happened. Because healing restored more than circumstances. Healing restored perspective, confidence, peace, the forgotten belief that your life is still bigger than the season that wounded you. And maybe Jesus has been holding your hand not only to help you survive this season, but to help you remember who you still are beyond it. That truth creates deep reassurance, because some people listening right now do not need perfect explanations. They need to know they are not abandoned. They need to know they do not have to survive this season alone. They need to know that even with imperfect faith, exhausted hearts, unanswered questions, Jesus still has not let go of their hand. There are moments in life where people do not need another explanation. They need reassurance. Not reassurance that everything will change immediately. Reassurance that they are not alone while waiting for things to change. Because suffering has a way of isolating people emotionally, even surrounded by others. Pain can make a person feel profoundly alone. Alone with the fear. Alone with the exhaustion. Alone with the unanswered prayer. Alone with the private battle nobody fully understands. And maybe this is exactly where you are right now. Trying to stay strong, trying to keep believing. Trying to carry one more day when one more day already feels heavy enough. Listen carefully. You do not need to have perfect faith to be held by Jesus. That truth matters deeply. Because many hurting people secretly believe they must become stronger before God draws closer. that they must stop struggling before heaven responds tenderly. That weakness somehow disqualifies them from divine companionship. But Jesus does not only walk beside people when their faith feels powerful, he stays beside exhausted hearts, confused hearts, hurting hearts, people whose prayers sound more like sighs than confident declarations, people who still love God but feel emotionally worn down by the season they are carrying. He stays, not passively observing, actively sustaining daily grace, daily strength, daily mercy for one more difficult day. Because God's faithfulness during suffering is not distant observation, it is presence, companionship, the quiet strength that keeps a person moving when their emotional reserves feel dangerously low. And maybe that explains something important about your story. Maybe you survived this season not because you mastered pain, not because you became emotionally invincible, because Jesus kept giving enough strength for one more step, enough grace for one more prayer, enough hope to prevent total collapse. Sometimes healing begins when a person realizes they do not have to survive the season alone. Think about how freeing that is. You do not have to carry impossible emotional weight through human strength alone. You do not have to manufacture constant confidence. You do not have to pretend the battle is easy. You can bring the exhaustion honestly before Jesus. The confusion, the tears, the fear that healing is taking too long, the weakness you tried hiding. Bring it, because Jesus still sees your pain. Jesus still understands the battle. Jesus still walks beside you inside the chapter you thought would destroy you. And Jesus still holds your hand, not loosely, not temporarily, faithfully. And before this message ends, there is a prayer your heart may need if you are tired of carrying pain alone. Take a deep breath right now, not because the pain suddenly disappeared, not because every question already has an answer, but because you do not have to carry this season alone anymore. Maybe you came into this message exhausted, emotionally tired, quietly wondering how much longer you can keep holding everything together. And if we are honest, perhaps part of you has been afraid that this pain will never leave, afraid that healing is taking too long, afraid that life will always feel this heavy. But listen carefully before we pray. This season of pain is not your permanent home. Your story did not end inside this chapter. And Jesus has not loosened his grip on your hand. Not during the waiting. Not during the confusion. Not during the nights that felt too heavy for human strength. So wherever you are, pray this honestly, Jesus. You see the pain I am carrying, the exhaustion nobody fully understands, the emotional weight I became tired of explaining, the silent battles, the delayed healing, the questions I keep asking when hope feels harder to hold. Lord, if I am honest, I feel tired of hurting, tired of trying to stay strong, tired of wondering when this season will finally change. But today, I bring this pain into your hands, not pretending I am unaffected, not pretending the battle is easy, honestly, completely. I surrender what I can no longer carry alone. Jesus, strengthen the person praying these words right now. Strengthen the exhausted heart. Strengthen the discouraged mind. Strengthen the faith that has been quietly fighting invisible battles for too long. Bring peace into emotional chaos. Bring comfort into lonely places. Bring hope back into hearts that became afraid to expect good things again. And Lord, if healing feels delayed, remind us that delay is not abandonment. If restoration feels distant, remind us that you still work inside what we cannot yet see. If suffering has distorted the way we see ourselves, remind us who we still are beyond this season. Teach us how to trust you one day at a time, one prayer at a time, one faithful step at a time, because you are still beside us, still sustaining us, still walking through the storm with us. And for the person listening right now who feels completely overwhelmed, let this truth settle deeply inside their soul. They are not abandoned inside their pain. They are not forgotten inside their waiting. They are not carrying this battle alone because Jesus, you still hold their hand, faithfully, tenderly, completely, and you will not let go until everything is made right. This season will not last forever. Healing is still possible, hope is still alive, and pain does not have final authority over the story. In Jesus' name, Amen. If this message strengthened your soul today, stay connected to this channel. There are more messages here for hearts walking through difficult seasons.